Okay. All right. No, I'll go. Well, wow, two hard acts to follow. Reminds me of the great class that Brian and I had a chance to teach together. We spent a semester with about 25 students going through race and racism in America. We had this great combination going of history and sort of getting students to think about race and their lived experience. And so this is a good springboard to think about St. Martin's and to be reflective about who we are as an institution and how issues of whiteness are a part of this discussion. So I want to give you a reflective question, and just hold the question in your mind. Okay. What would it take for St. Martin's to be truly inclusive and responsive to students of color? What would it take? What capacities, what strategies, what critiques would have to be in place? Okay? So hold that in your mind, and let me give you a little bit of a history of how students of color have responded to that question over the years. And this is based on survey data that we have done, by the way. Students, if you haven't done so already, complete the Campus Climate Survey. I think the deadline is today, if I'm not mistaken. And 2 Visa cards are at stake, $100 Visa cards for that. So, sorry, faculty staff. And we do this about every 2 years. And what we're looking for is data from students from different racial and ethnic backgrounds and identities to tell us their perceptions of St. Martin's. And this is a fairly long survey, and at the end of it, I have about 7 open-ended questions. I've been asking these questions for about 6 years. And 2 questions that get people fired up quite a bit. The first one is that St. Martin's, something like this: do you agree that St. Martin's should require all students to take a class focusing on diversity, equity, social justice? Okay. The second is, should St. Martin's actively recruit faculty of color? Okay. The dividing line in the responses of students is quite apparent in these 2 questions. If you are white, the perception of those questions are, no, we don't particularly want to take a class. That typically comes out. And for all kinds of reasons. One is financial. That's one more class I have to pay for. But something that, an idea that keeps emerging consistently over time is, no, this is not a very important thing that we have to really think about. Students of color, on the other hand, offer a different take. Yeah, this class should be required. We want students, we want everybody to have this requirement. The second question about faculty of color is even more, how do I say, contentious in their response. White students typically respond, race shouldn't matter. The best person should be teaching me in the class. Okay. Students of color consistently respond, absolutely. When I see myself, when I see people who look like me teaching the class, that means a lot. I connect with the curriculum. And this goes along with the data as well. So those are some of the data, big sort of institutional data things that we do here at St. Martin's to get a sense of how students are perceiving how we're doing as an institution. Anecdotally, and if you haven't had a chance to come by the Diversity and Equity Center, this is the 2nd floor of Arnott Hall. This is the first year that we've been open, and I've been here going on 12 years. And we finally have a Diversity and Equity Center. And many of you have been in there already, but some of you have not. So come on in, take a look, and you'll see this sort of pattern emerge. There's a group of core students. 2 of them are sitting right here. I don't want to put you on the spot. Who are consistently, 3 of them actually, who are consistently there at the deck. And these wonderful conversations emerge. And they don't think that I'm listening, but I'm actually listening. I can't help it. Right? These thoughtful, interrogating conversations about what it means to be a student of color at St. Martin's. And they are confirming everything that a lot of us who think about this think about, right? That Things that come up like this. I am one of a few of my particular race to be in the classroom. When issues of race come up in the classroom or outside the classroom, these are some of the contentious topics that come up, or the feelings that I have. And what they're describing is the ongoing pattern that over the 12 years that I've been here, that students of color have said over and over again. They have said things like, wow, St. Martin's, it's a pretty white place. It's a really white place. Now, if you've looked at our website, does anyone know off the top of your head how many students of color we profess to have, percentage-wise? Say again? 48%. Freshman class came in around that this year. It was about 48% students of color. As a whole, we fluctuate between 35 and 37% students of color. It's a pretty high number, comparatively speaking. But when students of color describe their everyday experience, it is not 35%. Right? If they're sitting in class or they're walking in the hall with residents, they feel that feeling of isolation and alienation. Other anecdotal sort of information that comes up. When I go to my classes, what would it really be like to study something through the lens of my racial experience? Right? Or to think about the world through the lens of my group, or the epistemological assumptions of the group that I belong to and the way that my group frames the world. What would that class feel like and look like? And what they're saying in those statements is that their experience overall does not reflect that. It reflects what I describe as a Eurocentric sort of perspective. That doesn't mean that certain classes don't disturb that. When Brian is a class in race and racism, guaranteed, that's an interrogation of what the normal flow of our curriculum is. Carrie, you do this as well, Teresa. There are a number of us, and we'll be doing all this work. But in terms of like a system, the overwhelming experience that our students of color describe is, they don't, maybe not using this word, but I would use it, it's kind of a Euro-American sort of frame of the world. Okay? So what would their experience be like if a certain number of courses or degree programs would help students of color immerse themselves in their own experience? One student recently asked me, when are we going to do Chicana studies? Like, I don't know. It's a good question. Okay. And then a couple of years ago, we did a focus group of roughly about 25 students of color. This was in 2010, 2011. And we were asking, we had a professional person come up from off campus come in and do a series of interviews with students. And the questions that we had this person ask talked about classroom experience, talked about the residence halls, talked about the overall perception that students have of St. Martin's. And back then, the question, a clear image was emerging, or picture was emerging. This is a really white campus. And what they meant by that wasn't just white people are running around and sort of pervading, but it was the norm of whiteness. Everything from the way we communicate to each other. One student from Hawaii said, I have to switch into this white talk. In order to be understood and in order to be comfortable, I got to switch from Islander talk into white talk. And the student was laughing about it, but it was sort of, what kind of environment do we have and maintain and create for students of color, in this case a Native Hawaiian student coming in, who has to consciously now start to think about different ways of communicating to be understood and to feel included, those kinds of things, right? And this was a pattern that went over and over again. So that's, and there's so much data, and when I get this data, hopefully we'll have time where I can present this data to the campus community so people can sort of see what I'm talking about. And every year I'm hopeful that the story is going to change a little bit. And I still am, back to Emily's claim, I'm ending on a little hope here. 2010, to bring up the question of whiteness, tough going. right? And I can tell you anecdotally, if I were to say something in a meeting like, hey, we should interrogate whiteness, people would go, oh, what are you doing? What are you talking about, right? And then this year, something took place that I didn't think would ever take place, quite frankly. How many people went to Robin DiAngelo's mandatory, okay, all right, mandatory, right? Mandatory, okay, mandatory. But Robin DiAngelo is a critical whiteness scholar. Critical whiteness scholar. If you would have asked me 5 years ago, would we have a chance at St. Martin's to bring a critical whiteness scholar to campus? I would have said, no way. We're not ready. We have major shifts to make. What do we have to do to sort of get ourselves going that way? But we brought Robin DiAngelo, and without much resistance, quite frankly. I was in the inside group sort of making this happen. And I was pleasantly surprised, as a person who's been doing this work for 20 years now, that people were saying, absolutely, let's bring her on, let's bring her in. We even had Robin come in and do a training just for the cabinet. Right? That was an all-day training, and there were 2 folks of color in the room. 3 folks of color. The rest were white. These are administrators going through the interrogation of whiteness. And I want to say at the Robin DiAngelo event, there were probably 220 of us sitting in the room. Now, all of us walked away with different things from that event. I've seen the results of our survey. And they're really provocative. They're really confirming of the work that we've done and the work we still need to do. But the fact that we were able to do this was quite a testament to the development of St. Martin's as an institution. And what I'm doing, and those of you who know me, this is something that I talk about quite a bit. From a critical whiteness perspective, that's what it is to truly accommodate students of color. Students of color are not problems to be solved or things to be fixed or objects to understand. Instead, critical whiteness says, turn the lens on the institution. How are we, as a predominantly white institution, maintaining, replicating, reproducing systems of whiteness, thoughts, ideas, beliefs, ideologies? How does our everyday communication norms reflect a sort of white ideology and white way of being, a white privilege, if you will? The fact that we were able to begin that conversation, start scratching the surface of that with Robin, is, I think, a good positive note to end on. To think about, not just, but it's not a solution, it's not an end point, it's a beginning point into thinking about how do we even become more critical of that. So back to the question, what does it mean to be accommodating, inclusive, responsive to students of color? I pose it to you. From a critical whiteness lens, what do you think? Let's get some responses. Susan?
I think one thing is not to pick token people to represent different groups, and we need to improve that too.
Mm-hmm. So, in other words, it's a practice of whiteness to tokenize.
Exactly.
So if we become conscious of the way that we do it, because being critically conscious of whiteness is to make visible what is invisible, and we tokenize and say, that person's a person of color, that person can take care of this issue. Exactly. Very good. Yeah. What else? Yeah, Irene?
Well, I'm sorry, I missed most of the talk, so I really wish you
Missed 2 great ones. Yeah. It's recorded though.
I was just going to say, being more comfortable about talking about whiteness or race, just learning how to do it with comfort instead of being afraid to talk about it because we're so awkward or we feel like we'll make a mistake or something like that.
That's right. Yeah, it's the comfort level of being able to even say whiteness, or to say let's interrogate whiteness or ideologies of whiteness, and recognizing full well that in the process of doing so, we're going to stumble and we're going to go certain ways that we shouldn't have. It's owning it. It's being willing to own it. Being comfortable with knowing that we will not do it in the way that is fully responsive, and just keep moving that direction. Robin talked about it a lot in her notion of white fragility. The moment that is brought up, we put up that sort of Tai Chi defensiveness and sort of block it and say, that's not, what are you doing? Instead, step into it. Stepping into it in the conversation and being willing to feel uncomfortable.
I think too that thinking with Leticia's framework that even the resistance, right, that we get in response to things like Robin DiAngelo's training, that even when that's not embraced as a necessary and productive step, that's also good. That resistance is actually part of the conversation. That even getting people agitated is progress, and I really appreciate that about the development, looking developmentally at St. Martin's. Like, irritation is good.
Yeah. It's the beginning point of hopefully significant learning.
I sort of forgot your initial question. I'm sorry, it's like 4 o'clock.
That's right. What does St. I was framing it here as I was listening to those two. Like, I think this is the question I want to ask.
I have an answer, but I don't even know what it.
What does it mean for St. Martin's to be responsive, inclusive of students? And I'm framing it that way because historically it was fix the student of color.
Yes. Okay. I apologize. I was there, and then I sort of.
That's it. That's right.
Other places. I think you were talking about responsiveness, and definitely there definitely was the fixing. Like, we're just going to haul a couple students, and I remember that from 2009.
Yeah.
And then they're going to give us the answer. And I think also just sort of this intersectional approach that our students have very different kind of lived experience based on gender and other identities and immigration status, and that again, I still think that we are sort of still in that one-size-fits-all approach. Like, we are going to fix this kind of thing, and to be responsive is to have an intersectional approach.
Yeah.
And I think curriculum also was sort of when you mentioned curriculum, like, there's a lot of problems, and I don't have this solution, so I'm not like ending on a shiny note. But
Right. But a critical lens on the curriculum would be one step.
I think we need to do that. We need to look at our curriculum, and I think that we just keep on saying things like social justice without any interrogation of what that actually means. Gotcha. Yeah. Jeremy?
I think that on the part of faculty in particular, I think that there's something to be said for just listening to our students. And I think maybe even for myself, 5 to 10 years ago, I would sometimes be dismissive of other ideas on these topics or competing ideas. And I think that over time I've become more open to listening to what other people's experiences are, and that I think it's really worked well for me. I think also and maybe this is discipline specific, psychology has really taken a beating the past 4 or 5 years. First from the outside, and now it's sort of internally, and so there's a lot of reflection and interrogation within psychology, like, what does it mean for something to be a significant difference, right? The statistical meaning of that. Who are these people that we're collecting data from, and who's not at the table to be as a part of that data, and also who's asking the questions and things like that. And I think talking about that with students, so that they realize that maybe it's not to the point where you should change your major, but just understand the discipline is flawed, whatever discipline it might be, and the way that we're going to improve upon that is for a lot of times for students to be the ones to lead and ask those questions. Because I've found time and time again, when we're talking about issues of race and other sort of identity differences, students are leading that conversation, and that sort of who's the first to sort of mention and problematize different issues. And then, the way, as far as like working with administrators and folks on the other side, I just remind them that if we don't work on fixing some of these issues, those students will leave, and they'll take their money with them.
Right.
And maybe that's really pessimistic, but I'm just like, sometimes administrators do run to the bottom line, as it says.
Right, right. If that motivates us, the sort of dollar, sides. But I think there would be a good opportunity for St. Martin's. You mentioned listening. That's something, as the scholarship of critical whiteness talks about. Robin talked about it a lot. A point of white privilege is to have this sort of, epistemic sort of privilege. I don't have to know the experiences of people of color. I can maneuver in the world. Right? So part of it is how do you shake that up a little bit? That when our students of color are speaking, and by the way, they are speaking in very sophisticated ways, in the way that we need to analyze St. Martin's, is to not talk and to really just be present and be there. I would invite you on that note to come to the deck and listen. The Diversity and Equity Center, that's the deck. We had Lisa Bornesol come in today and just sort of sit with students for an hour, and she listened to their stories and listened to their perspectives. Susan was there. We had a great little just presence of just having faculty members come in and just be with students and listening to their perspectives. That's what I hope the deck does. So you can go there. It's not just for certain people. You can walk into that door and hopefully learn something. We do it together. Okay, that's all I got, Kale. So you want to wrap this up?
Yeah.